Welcome, everybody, to the Ever Evolving Truth special report here on, one of the biggest trials I shouldn't even say the biggest, one of the most important trials that we've seen in a long time.
Our lifetime. I would say our lifetime.
You think our lifetime? The Derek Chauvin trial. The verdict is in. According to multiple news sources, the reading of the verdict is going to happen any minute. It looks like CNN's feed just went to the courtroom. Wags, if you could let us know when it looks like they're about to start reading it, we will put that up on our screen. But it looks like it's getting very close. I can't believe we're even talking about that. Leah, you don't seem to have high hopes for this. I've talked to several people today that think that he's going to walk.
Oh, they think that he's actually going to walk.
I think that he's actually going to walk. I think the exact quote from my science teacher, Mr. Edwards, was every fiber in my being thinks that he's guilty, and every fiber of my being thinks he's going to walk.
That's terrifying. And I don't know why I'm being optimistic, because I am not an optimistic person. But I feel very similar to the way I did on election day. Just very kind of, I don't have much faith in what's going to happen here. A part of me thinks this whole thing was a show. It was a show trial. I still don't understand why he went to trial for it. I don't know how you can watch a man kneel on someone's neck for 9 minutes and think that he's not guilty. I personally think second-degree murder is not enough. From what I understand, premeditation can happen in an instant in the legal sense. The moment he kept kneeling on his neck, to me, it was premeditation. Now, that being said, I think
someone, just to touch on that point, I think the way, I forget who, maybe it could have been Sterner, but the way someone explained it to me was that the prosecution wanted to go for the highest charge they thought was possible to get him convicted on. And maybe this, obviously we haven't talked to the prosecution, but maybe they didn't believe they could get him on murder one, and that then he would have walked and they couldn't have retried him. So that's, I guess,
it's better than overreaching, for sure. Yeah. I agree. It's time, Wags is saying.
All right, so let's come in. This is the reading of the verdict, and hopefully after this we'll get our thoughts.
I'm sick to my stomach.
All rise for the jury. All right, please be seated. Members of the jury, I understand you have a verdict. Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts as they will appear in the permanent records of the 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota Plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, Defendant. Verdict, Count 1. Court File Number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty.
Oh!
Thank God.
Oh, my God.
On at 1:44 p.m. Signed, juror foreperson, juror number 19.
Wow.
Same caption, verdict, count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to the 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by jury foreperson, juror number 19.
He's going to get 40 years.
Same caption, verdict, count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury
Holy shit.
19. Members of the jury, I'm now going to ask you individually if these are your true and correct verdicts. Please respond yes or no. Juror number 2, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 9, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 19, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 27, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 44, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Well, we don't need to go through listen to this process. Wags, if something happens, obviously break in and let us know. Wow. So we didn't get, if you're just joining us, we didn't get much time to talk about what our thoughts were going to be before it broke in. Wags, you can leave it up. We'll go back to it. You can keep your screen shared so we can go back to it if need be.
Yeah, I want to see the crowd.
So if you're just tuning in, Derek Chauvin has been found guilty on all charges.
All charges.
Yes.
Members of the
I now officially have faith in our justice system. I do. I still think that this was a show trial. I think it was done for a reason. Although I think Chauvin is just, I mean, look at him. There's no emotion in his face. I mean, no fear. I mean, he does have a mask on. I get that, but I don't know. Just cocky ass motherfucker. Is he not? I don't know.
I don't know. You didn't see it in his eyes. I mean, I'd be shitting my pants.
I'd be crying.
I'd be bawling. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be crying, honestly. Now, obviously, there's still the business of sentencing. I don't know. Obviously, we don't have the resources to know what Minnesota law and what kind of mandatory minimums are. Obviously, the felony comes with one. That's probably pretty easy to find. But if there's a minimum maximum here, if he gets the minimum, that's going to upset some people as well. But I think for now we've avoided the riots or the protesting in the streets.
I hope so.
You can see the coverage here. There are some people that have gathered. Clearly, they're happy with the verdict and satisfied with the verdict, and hopefully, I mean, obviously, we support protesting here, but any sort of violence that would have, almost assuredly erupted from this, it looks like we're going to avoid that, which is comforting.
Let's be clear here. I'm not sure we're going to avoid that. I think there might be some people on the opposite side, some extremists on the Blue Lives Matter, point of this swinging pendulum or whatever.
That is a wonderful sight right there. Him being taken away in cuffs.
It absolutely is. And what now? I mean, this is a cop going into a prison. Like, are they going to keep him away from Gen Pop? Like, how is that going to work?
They shouldn't. This motherfucker shouldn't get any. The moment he kneeled on that man's neck, on George Floyd's neck, and did not get up after he was gasping for breath, begging for mercy, and a completely had no ability to harm anybody there. The second he stopped being a cop, and he should not be treated as such in any way, shape, or form after this.
I agree. I couldn't agree more.
Put him in Gen Pop and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, if he gets his ass kicked, he gets his ass kicked. Good. I hope somebody kneels on his neck. I'm sorry. I know that may sound juvenile and violent. I don't condone violence, but Derek Chauvin this could have gone two very different ways. Okay. If he walked, it was going to be bad, but that also would have set a precedent. It would have set a precedent for cops to be able to do what they want when they want. I don't think that's going to happen as much now.
No, we talked about it on a recent episode. It was one of our Friday news episodes, and it ended up being a bigger discussion about the police in this country. And Leah and I will get flack every day, all day, for our stance on our grouping of police officers together. But then I brought up the fact that maybe the most important testimony in this trial was that of Derek Chauvin's CO. And he went on the stand and under oath and said that, what Derek Chauvin did was not acceptable. This is not how we do things. This is not how we as police conduct ourselves. And I think that was a huge, huge step forward in the right direction, and good for him. Absolutely 100% good for him. I mean, it's we just, up until that moment, we really just haven't seen that from a fellow police officer. And hopefully, I think I said it on that show as well, hopefully that gives other police officers, not just in positions of power, but other police officers, to step up and say something when they see a clear wrongdoing by one of their quote unquote brothers. Because that person, Derek Chauvin, even though he put on a uniform every day for how many years, was not one of your brothers. He was making your life harder. He was making you a target for people that have violent tendencies. And let's be clear, I don't want to see police officers killed in any way, shape, or form. But let's also be clear as to why they're being murdered on the streets when they are. And it's because of people like Derek Chauvin, who cause people to be fearful of police officers on a daily basis. So this is so monumental and so huge. And, especially in a couple of months ago, we saw that Breonna Taylor did not get justice.
No,
the
she
justice
didn't.
she deserved. And
Well,
it's a good feeling, but let's not relax because of this one verdict, either.
No, I don't think we can relax, but I do think, like I was saying with I had a middle of the day live stuff. I had to get up and do stuff. But I think now, look, we can say that cops do not have unfettered power anymore. They don't. If you do something wrong, you will be held accountable in a court of law. And I think that's why this is such a very important case, because it's going to hopefully make people realize that police don't have, they're not unbridled here. Like, they need to be held accountable when they do things like this. The problem is, this was an extreme case. You know what I mean? Like, what he did to George Floyd was murder. And in my opinion, it was first-degree murder. There's no way that you're kneeling on someone, you don't feel their body, just the life fall out of him. If we could see it on the video, he felt it with his knees. But what bothers me is that this is happening somewhere in this country right now. There is a black man being stopped by police for absolutely no reason, just because he is existing in a car.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that needs to end. And the only way it's going to end is with some sort of a thing like this, like something like this George Floyd case. I think I don't know. I can't really explain what I'm trying to say. Like, there has to be something. He needs to be the poster boy for, this is what's going to happen to you if you keep being an asshole. I mean, I don't know any other way to put it. Do you?
No. Up until now, I feel like there's some, we have Jordan breaking in here in his car. We'll bring him and get his thoughts in. But up until now, I believe that, hi Jordan, how are you? I believe that cops, the cops that would, on the level of Derek Chauvin, believed that they had unbridled power.
Absolutely.
And hopefully now the justice system has created that level of fear that maybe they don't. And maybe they'll second guess their actions. So let's bring in friend of the show, Jordan Henning. How are you, Jordan?
I'm good, Jeff. How are you, man?
A little better, seeing this verdict.
I was feeling anxious all day about it.
I was too.
The whole trial, because what's fascinating about the justice system is that these defense lawyers are really fucking good at what they do.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not only that, because there's like a documented history of police officers being in this position, and the jury being an extension of the district attorney and the other workings of the criminal justice system, and become hesitant to drop the full weight of the law on these officers, because even though officers do commit horrible crimes, a lot of the times they're still given a very broad benefit of the doubt that is not given to the average Joe or Jane citizen of of the United States. They're given a lot more leeway in their, in their treatment in the criminal justice system, and they're also just generally given much less harsh sentences. So I mean, that remains to be seen what the judge determines to be the adequate sentencing. But I'm really happy with how this turned out as of right now.
Do you think that the judge will be lenient here? Like, what do you think is going to happen? Or is he going to get the max of like 40 years?
So I don't know exactly how Minnesota statutes will work for different things, or how the laws work. I shouldn't say statutes, but like how the laws may work in this scenario. Either way, a lot of states work on like an early release earned like leniency, where even if he's sentenced to the maximum, they do like a formula which generally ends up a person only serving 2/3 of the maximum before parole can be given. But again, there's a precedent that's pre-existing with officer committed felonies, wherein they get sentenced to the most harsh, thing that they can do, and then politicians come in and vacate those sentences or commute those sentences because of political motivation of the prosecution, when they're the prosecution, right? So like, right. But you see it other times where they'll come in and they'll vacate sentences for police officers who've been convicted of crimes after serving 2 or 3 years, once the political heat dies down.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta get my railing. I gotta get my railing of Trump in here. Do you think Trump would have pardoned him?
Oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
If he won a second term, this is like right up his alley.
I don't know if he can legally because it's a state. But he would have found a way to do it. I mean, can't the president only vacate? Like, he can only pardon federal crimes, right? Not state level crimes.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, actually, Jordan had posted earlier this week, and I had shared it, an article about like officers and basically police officers donating to the defense of people, like Derek Chauvin. There were a few other people that
Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah.
And actually using their emails from work, and they're not being punished for it. So that's a great example of what you just said. Like, sure, the jury can say, you're found guilty, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. They can all rally behind him and figure out a way to make him do 18 months. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I was afraid of more than anything, that he would only get the minimum charge, and that he was going to get second-degree manslaughter and serve a year, if that. At least I don't think that can happen here.
I mean, the good news is hopefully Minnesota is a minimum mandatory state like Pennsylvania, where if you're sentenced to a minimum, you have to at the very least serve that minimum before you can be eligible for release.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the case, but I do believe on the second-degree murder charge, like the one that carried the max 40, I think it was a min 10. So if Minnesota is a minimum mandatory state, he would be eligible for parole in 10 years. Now, if they're a 2/3 or 3/4 state or something like that, then he could be eligible for parole on this second-degree murder charge in 7.5 years. So, I mean, still, it's not, we're not talking first-degree murder like this bastard going away for the rest of his life.
Right.
We're talking about, him getting out before he's eligible for AARP.
Right. That's a really good point. And how will the charges be sentenced? So he was found guilty on all charges. Is that going to be all lumped into one big sentence, or is it going to be, consecutive sentences? We won't know any of that. And does the judge just handle that? The jury will have no say in that, correct?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, most states, I know it can be different, but from my best understanding is that juries are only involved in death sentences.
Right. That's what I thought too.
So, and I know that's not always the case, but that's primarily the case. So in this instance, it would be the judge. So who knows if the judge is under a lot of pressure? I mean, I'm pretty sure this judge was pissed off the whole time, just
He
reading his
was.
facial expressions and body language. I don't think he was ever in favor of Chauvin getting an innocent charge. But the judge has to act in a manner according to the fact that everything the judge does and everything that this trial encompassed is going to be under
Scrutiny.
scrutiny, but also grounds for appeal. I mean, especially the whole Maxine Waters, and then one could argue that even Biden chipping in at the last
Yep.
minute, that the evidence was overwhelming, provided an atmosphere that could get this guy a retrial. Now, good news is he's going to be in jail throughout that whole procedure, because once you're convicted, you're not eligible for bail on retrial hearings. It just all goes to your minimum sentencing. So at least he'll be off the street. But I mean, and
Yeah.
I heard you guys, just the last thing, and I'll give it up because I'm just a guest right now, but and I'm in my car. But I heard you guys talking about and joking about, him being in some type of general population. That'll never happen.
I don't think so either.
Happen.
He's never going to be in Gen Pop.
He will be in, administrative segregation, or what's called ADSEG, or, something like that, in a lot of different places, with some of the, more undesirable populations of people in state prison, your child sex offenders, and different things like that. So he'll probably have a cell to himself the whole time, and he'll be buddy with all the guards, because, this stratification of white supremacy is everywhere in the criminal justice system. It's not just, in the DA's office. It's not just in the judges. It's everywhere. It's police officers. It's security guards. It's COs at different places. Like, not saying they're all bad people, but there are bad eggs inside of a dozen,
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
So, I mean, even if he's there, there's still a good chance that he'll get preferential treatment and all that kind of stuff that you have to worry about, being bestowed upon white people, that is not even in question when it comes to, people of color.
Yeah, you're.
And he should be in Gen Pop. I mean, if we're gonna there's no to me, there's no reason to give him preferential treatment, right? He's no longer a police officer. It goes to what I said, we need to hold people with this type of power to a higher accountability, because they're trained to they're trained to kill you. And I think, the best quality we can see in people like this, our military, our police, is the ability to restrain themselves from using their training to kill you.
Yes.
And clearly he didn't do that. And I just think that needs to be taken into consideration. And these same people that are gonna speak out and defend him are the same ones that are gonna be like, would be like, only the strongest survive. Okay. All right.
Right.
Throw him in there. Only the strongest survive, right? Throw him in Gen Pop, see if he survives. But it's a double standard with these people. I still can't believe, up to the final minute, there was people coming out in support of this man.
Do you think that
just
they'll
baffles
change?
me.
Do you think that anything is going to change from this? Do you think that there is going to be new laws, new regulations? I mean, besides not kneeling on someone's neck, do you see this in any way helping the problem? Or do you think that this is just going to be more diversive between the white supremacists and the intelligent people, let's say, in law enforcement, the good guys and the bad guys? What do you guys think?
We started to see some laws push through very quickly. I don't know. I think it was mostly for show. I don't know if they were actually laws that were going to make a difference. The defund the police movement. obviously is met with mixed emotions because of what it's labeled as.
The
But
wordage.
I
Yeah.
think we need police reform
Mm-hmm.
100%, and not just for the people, but for the police officers themselves,
Yeah.
for their safety and their well-being.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know if anybody's listening. And Katrina, we are absolutely relieved too. There's no doubt about it. She says the defense would have set a dangerous precedent if they had won their case. I
Absolutely.
totally agree. Totally agree with that. I don't know if anybody listening watches Bill Maher. And by the way, if you are listening, thank you, or listening or watching, thank you. Do me a favor, if you're watching from my site, go over to the Ever Evolving Truth podcast Facebook page, like and follow that, and watch it from there. That definitely helps us out. And feel free to let your comments be known here. We'll share them on the screen here.
And if you want to come on, if you can talk, if you have something you want to say, we can let you on with us.
Yeah, please do. So what I was saying was, if you guys out there listening follow Bill Maher, whether you like him or not, he had a great discussion about police brutality and violence. I believe it was last week's show. And, you know, one of the things he says is like this idea that being a cop is the most dangerous job in the country. It's not even the 10th most dangerous job in the country. So yes, it's dangerous, but this idea that every time we give these guys a pass, these men and women a pass because they were fearful of their lives is ridiculous, right? They have to be trained to de-escalate situations and use something other than deadly force to subdue a potential threat. And other countries have figured this out. And haven't had police deaths and civilian deaths in years. They go on years sometimes. So I just think it was a great discussion. If you have some time, go and watch that segment. Again, like him or hate him, it was a really good discussion. And his guest that day was I believe it was a journalist who left journalism to become a police officer. So she had a great perspective on everything. Yeah, it was just really, really, really good discussion.
That's really interesting.
Well, and one of the best things I've seen recently that kind of encompasses this whole debate, but like reframed in a different lens, is something I shared the other day, or maybe even this morning. But it said, if firefighters went around this country deliberately pouring gasoline on fires instead of putting them out, we would probably have a conversation about reforming the fire department.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Maybe.
And that's what a lot. Well, right. We all know how logical groups of people can be. But like that's kind of what we're talking about here is like police not having the adequate skills to de-escalate certain situations. But the really messed up part about this stuff is like looking at the macro level. A lot of this, the only reason there isn't reform is from police advocacy groups or police unions, because the less money that police get, the less money unions get, and then the less money they have to advocate and pay for, their political, things, right? So if you talk to a lot of like police officers, a lot of them don't want to be involved in situations like this. They don't want to be a part of this crisis response, of these emergency mental health calls, of, situations like this, right? But the machine that they're a part of only wants money, right? And anything that talks about reducing the amount of money coming into policing is perceived as an existential threat to policing as it's known, right? So,
right.
But you see this happen in other professions, and people are just told to suck it up and deal with it, right? Like cuts to education, cuts to Medicare, cuts to social work funding, cuts to all of these other things are discussed and happen all the time, and people are just told to suck up and deal with it. But for some reason, you start about that conversation with police, it's like, you're asking people to sacrifice their firstborn children on the altar of Satan and, stuff like that. It's ridiculous.
Police and the military. That's exactly, for some reason, they're held to a much higher standard. And to your point, you wouldn't have a pediatrician, okay, do heart surgery, right? There's different levels of doctors. I don't understand this concept of why a beat cop like Derek Chauvin, who has a file thicker than I don't even know what,
20,
this was
20
not his first
26 counts. There are 26
reports of misconduct.
reports of misconduct.
26. That's a fucking lot. That's a lot. One is too many. To have someone have a weapon. And the thing is, this guy didn't even use a weapon. He didn't even use a weapon. 9 times out of 10, it's a gun. But I said it, on the last episode of Teat, I said, I don't think beat cops should have guns, period. That could be a way to stop this kind of thing from happening. I don't know why there's not different levels of policing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I listen, and I don't want to bring Sterner up here. I don't want to misquote him or anything like that because he's not here to defend his point, but he got very agitated by that idea. And then I totally agree with you. I don't think a routine traffic stop needs to have guns associated with it, right?
Right.
It just doesn't. Like, I don't care if there's drugs in the car, right? There's no reason for you to pull a gun on somebody just because they have drugs in the car. There's just no reason for it, right? So I'm curious to get Jordan's thought on this too. But I suggested a solution to that. Like, you pull, you make a routine traffic stop. If you don't feel comfortable, if there's something that feels off to you, instead of pulling your weapon, you call in a higher, more trained specialist to come and meet you at that traffic stop and handle the situation. Again, someone that goes through, I believe we heard from a Navy SEAL, or someone told us of a Navy SEAL that used to talk about how they do 90% training and 10% missions. Like, someone like that should be handling the weapons. Period.
Yeah.
Like Joe Schmo from who graduated high school, doesn't need any sort of college education, gets hired to be in charge of your life, doesn't need to pull a gun at a traffic stop for any reason whatsoever.
I couldn't agree more.
You need to call in the higher authorities in that sense. But you make a great point. There's different level of doctors. Why can't there be different level of police?
Right.
Ones that can carry weapons, ones that can't. It's to not even be open to that idea is absurd. And just news from our little county, Jordan, you'll have a comment on this, I'm sure too. Reading just announced plans to eliminate the minimal need for college credits to join their police force.
Wait, they're getting rid of college credits? Oh, that's smart. Oh my God,
Yeah.
This is exactly what we're talking about.
So
Wow.
it was an idea that the chief of police had to assist in being able to hire and or promote people into leadership positions. So this wasn't like let's get rid of the associate's degree requirement for a police officer. This was, I can't get enough good police officers to stay in my force and get the education required to become a supervisor. So can we please eliminate the education requirements to become a supervisor?
Oh my God.
So
you
this
need
wasn't
to, you need a college education to be a secretary at most places.
exactly.
Oh my God.
Exactly. So they're taking away the bachelor's degree requirement for supervisory leadership position, or at least that's what the chief of police for Reading, that's what his proposal was to the city of Reading board. I think they're called council people.
Yeah.
And they haven't, this is new, right? They haven't voted or decided on this yet.
They're
done?
not.
Okay.
No, he just brought it up and they were having like a Q&A session. So I doubt it's going to happen, but I mean, it's a problem that a lot of municipalities and small areas face. They don't have enough, a tax base to draw in the good officers and retain them. But this is also another form of racism, right? So you have a city of 100,000 people of Reading that has a lot of crime, a lot of drugs, and a lot of need for community-based type of policing solutions, but they don't get the type of officers that are capable of providing community-based policing. So they get the type of officer that is willing to work there for low amounts of money, and it ends up seeing the good officers go to areas where they're not even needed, right? So like a suburb of Reading, like Wyomissing, huge tax base, expensive houses, one of the best schools academically and athletically in the state. They're always, Wyomissing is always up there. And they have a police force where the, people can come in and start at $60,000 or $70,000. Whereas people in Reading, they're making 40, 45. So how do you keep officers, good officers, in a inner city, police force that can't pay what suburban police forces can pay in a lot of areas? And this is like it's a problem that continues to happen.
This is one of those situations where the free community college in exchange for public service would be a great thing. We will pay for your bachelor's degree, but you have to stay on the Reading police force for 10 years.
Well, or compensatory time for the time it takes you to take to get the degree. So like, you stay on Reading force for 4 years past the date of your 4-year degree, and your 4-year degree is paid for. I mean, a lot of places have that. My brother, just, a personal disclosure, my brother was in the Navy for 4 years because he got a Navy scholarship to go to med school, right? How many people wouldn't take that trade to not go into debt to be able to advance in their field of choice? And I was having a conversation with some people on the post I shared about this specific thing. And I'm like, when you're in a field and that field requires further or continuing education to advance, that is not an expenditure. That is not an undue expenditure. That is an investment that someone who wants to advance chooses to make and take on. And if any profession should have people that want to advance and get a further education, it's police. And if you want to talk about undue burden, go talk to every single social worker on the planet. Is what they make on a salary basis. I can guarantee you that there's a bigger difference in the cost, comparatively, for a social worker to go back to grad school than for a police officer to go to college.
Absolutely, 100%. If you're just joining us, we were commenting on the Derek Chauvin trial. The verdict is in. It was read, and he is guilty on all charges. We're most likely going to have to wait months for sentencing in that case, and there's going to be appeals and that kind of stuff going on. So we're far from a conclusion by any means, but this is a great feeling. It feels like justice right now, even though we're, like I said, months, if not years, away from having a finalized punishment for what he did for the murder of George Floyd. And that's what he is right now. He's a murderer.
He's a convicted murderer.
He's a convicted murderer as of right now. But then we got off and just talking about policing in general, and we've had a wonderful discussion here with Jordan. We're talking about our own small town. If you have comments, please leave them, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. If you want to join the conversation, I don't know how much longer we're going to go, but the link's in the chat. Please feel free to jump on. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. This is a monumental trial. Leah said the biggest one, the most important one in our lifetime.
I really think so. At least on the state level, for sure. I think it's going to. I mean, I believe Katrina, who was commenting, mentioned the Kimberly Potter case. For those who aren't familiar, she was the officer that shot a man in his own apartment because she thought it was hers.
Right.
And her trial is coming up. And I really wonder if this verdict will change things for her. I wonder, because I think hers will be just as big. It's just as important. I mean, what she did is clear cut, hands down murder. I don't think there's any question there. There was no crime being committed. She broke into someone's house and killed them. Ultimately, is what she did. It'll be very interesting to see how that case plays out.
Kimberly Potter is not. That's not the right one. This is the taser one.
Oh, this is the taser one.
the difference between the gun and the taser. That's Kimberly Potter.
Oh, that's Kimberly Potter.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, my mistake.
Unfortunately, there's a lot. And
yeah,
there's a
there's
lot to
so
be
many.
confused on right now.
I didn't think the gun and the taser was a woman. That's interesting. Thank you. I did not know that. There are so many, it's hard to keep track of which cop is killing who, which is disgusting.
If you're out there thinking that cops don't need more training, and then you also believe Kimberly Potter that she mistook her taser for her gun, then you're fucking delusional, plain and simple.
I would like to hear Wags if you want to pop in. If you don't want to, say you don't want to. But you grew up in the your family is very involved in the police force, correct?
Yes.
How do you feel about the verdict?
I mean, right is right and wrong is wrong. That has no color, no job description, no, where you stand in ranking as far as wealth. You do something wrong, you use deadly force, your own body as deadly force. I mean, you take the whole gun control out of it. I mean, the police officers that I'm friends with, that are in my family, that I respect, I'm acquaintances with, there's no doubt about what happened was wrong. Now the doubt comes in the people that immediately say all cops are bad, all cops are pigs, they should all be taken and stripped of all of their rights. Well, guess what? You don't have a lot of people that are showing up to be police officers.
Good
so
point.
there's a lot, and just to touch on it, because I tend to keep my comments to myself sometimes.
Put me on the spot here.
When it comes to police, when it comes to we talked about this on Teat last week, when there are medical emergencies, police are often showing up with the ambulance. When there are mental health emergencies, police are showing up with that as well. And I can tell you, as someone that spent many times as an EMT showing up on a possible suicide, or as someone that is having an emotional disorder, I waited faithfully for that police officer to show up, because if I'm hurt, how can I help someone that's hurting themselves? So they would show up as a first offense, go in, make sure that there aren't any weapons. If there are, then it'd be like, okay, let's look at the scene and say, what's the risk associated with it? I had a case one time where the guy tried to decapitate himself, and the only thing that was keeping him alive was that state trooper literally holding his neck together until I got there. He had his knife right next to him. He clearly couldn't do anything. So I take it personally when I hear comments like, just cops are awful and we should get rid of them, because I know what's in my life, and I know what I've experienced. But at the same time, my grandfathers, one's still alive, one has passed away, one was a state trooper, one was a local cop. They didn't have the issues that are here today. Things were handled a lot differently. And that's one of the reasons why my grandfather, that's still alive, actually stopped working. He retired after 25 years because things were changing. And he was a police officer in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, and things were changing. And, you couldn't just graduate high school and join the police force. There's a lot more to it than that. And that was even back then. So sometimes I take it a little personal, because I look at it and I can see why people on the Blue Lives Matter line saying, but they're not all bad. But that's not the issue.
Right. The issue is the bad ones.
And you know what? If you could have police officers that were trained to de-escalate situations, or for a traffic stop that turned into something more than just, hey, you're going to get a ticket because you have a headlight out, find me those officers. Find me those people that are willing to not only be hated for simply putting on a uniform, have the stigma against them to begin with, get paid shitty on top of it, and then tell them that, okay, you can do your job up until this point, but then you're going to have to call for someone else. Who is that someone else? Where are those people? So it has to start a lot sooner than just saying, we're going to take all their guns away, we're going to do this. When it comes to directly what you asked me, there's no doubt about it. And it's never an issue of, well, George Floyd did drugs. He had a history. He had a criminal record. He was a fucking human being, and he was murdered on the streets. And
Mhm.
people feel so afraid of police officers that they didn't feel like they could intervene because they thought they might get hurt themselves.
Right.
That's the issue. The issue is nothing else opposed to what George Floyd, who he was, what he did with his life. At that time, he was someone laying on the ground helpless. And the people watching him were helpless.
Mhm.
So,
And let's please stop using drugs in a system as some
Mhm.
justification to the way we treat people. Just because you do drugs or you have drugs in your system or you struggled with drugs of any shape does not make you a bad person.
No,
mhm.
it doesn't.
None of that
No.
makes you a bad person.
Even
And
when
there
you're
are,
high, it doesn't make you a
yeah.
bad person.
Well, there are even pharmaceutical drugs that are prescribed to you by a physician. And I'm not talking about pain medication. I'm talking about, I've talked about this on Teat before. I took a medication for my migraines that literally fucked me up. I
Mhm.
couldn't drive with it. There were times I was so clouded in my judgment that if someone came at me and I felt like defensive, I might have reacted differently than I normally would have. And again, it's a whole circle. It's a whole circle of people. It's police, it's social workers, it's physicians. It's everyone doing their part, but no one wants to take accountability.
I think that's the most important thing you just said is the accountability and the training. Like, I think it's important that I never thought of it to look at it that way. Like, how can you help
Mhm.
someone if you get hurt, right? The EMTs
Mhm.
on emotional distress calls. But the officer is not trained how to handle that emotional distress call either. And it
Mhm.
seems like there's a lot of cases. I can't think of his name right now, but there was a case where they shot, it was a few years back, where it was a social worker with his patient saying, he's not mentally sane, and they shot the guy
They
because
shot the
Mhm.
they shot the social worker.
the social worker,
Yeah.
because they were not trained to
Mhm.
handle and de-escalate that situation. There
Yeah.
needs to be training. And if things like in Reading, where it's like, okay, here, I'm not saying that I don't, obviously the world could not keep turning if we did not have law enforcement. I mean, you have to have it. It would be complete
Mhm.
anarchy. I get that. But I think there needs to be a level of some sort of more intense training, and it should be a constant thing. Like, I know teachers, when they have in services at high schools, it's
Mhm.
they're having training. They're being trained as they're working. I don't know, and I don't know. I'm not saying if it does or doesn't happen, but it doesn't seem like that is something that happens constantly in the police force. You should always be trying to better yourself, and
Mhm.
it could be funding. I don't know.
It's a lot of it is funding. You get these small, you know, not where I live now, but where I used to live, there wasn't always a cop on duty. It would go out to the state troopers. So you
Mhm.
have that, but then you ask for social workers to come de-escalate these, mental health issues, emergency calls. Find me a social worker that wants to come out at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Mhm.
Find
Well,
me one that wants to come out at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Right?
It's a lot. It's not just one thing. You have to make it a systematic approach to changing.
You're
oh,
And it can't
absolutely right.
just be
you're absolutely right, and that's the thing when people criticize Leah and myself for being so hard on police officers, and we say it's as a whole.
mhm.
I don't want to speak for Leah, but when I'm talking about that, I'm not saying that every single cop is bad.
Yeah.
Me neither.
I've never used those words. What I'm saying is the whole system is set up for everyone to fail. The
Mhm.
police, the people that are being engaged by the police, and if you are against police reform, you are not supporting the police officers because they are put in a position. And like Jordan mentioned, some of them are paid very well. The ones in the most dangerous parts of the job are usually paid the worst, right?
Mhm.
So we have to make those jobs more attractive, and we have to get beyond this idea that we need to pay people and offer them the least amount of benefits possible. right?
Mhm.
As a society, whether it's a government job or a private sector job, we just have to get beyond that. Otherwise, nothing's ever going to change, and you're not going to be able to get good people, right? If you pay someone a large enough sum of money to do a job that's really hard and it has a potential to make a huge difference, and also you're put yourself in danger, you're going to get more people coming out to do that job because the risk is worth the reward, right?
Mm-hmm.
But offering someone $36,000 a year to go get shot at in the worst part of an inner city, the most poverty-stricken part of the inner city, you're going to get some asshole, plain and simple. So it's got to change. And you said it's funding. I believe that too, but it's not because we're not throwing enough money at the police force. We're throwing it at the wrong places. There's no reason why a local police force needs a fucking tank. Like, we need to stop militarizing the police and put that money
of the police has to
and
end.
using it in smart ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you. We can't just change, a little piece of it or try to change it. It'll fail miserably. We have to change the whole system. Anyway, we're almost at an hour here. Let's wrap this up. Final thoughts. Again, Derek Chauvin found guilty on all charges today. People cheering in the streets instead of protesting and potentially rioting. So that feels good right now. Hopefully it stays that way. Has
President Biden spoken yet?
No, but he did say he was going to comment after the verdict. So I'm expecting at some point he will say something. But he did make a brief comment about it when he mentioned once the jury was sequestered and they couldn't hear his thoughts on it.
Mm-hmm.
He believed he wouldn't have an effect on their decision. He did mention that he thought the evidence was overwhelming. He didn't say in favor of guilty or not guilty, but you could tell. He's also become very close with the Floyd family. He's been in contact with them several times.
Let me ask all of you this, and welcome back, Jordan. I loved how you started making dinner. I was like,
I know,
right at home
hungry.
with us. I'm like, I need to go to Jordan's house.
Yeah, me too.
Hey, the wife's pregnant. The first thing that she said to me when I walked through the door on the podcast with y'all was, "Wait, when is that going to end? Like, what are we having for dinner?"
Cool.
I'm not pregnant, and I sympathize with that. So my question is, do we think this is kind of the straw that broke the camel's back? Do we think that we're going to start seeing people be held accountable? We think about Kimberly Potter.
I'm hoping so.
Do you think it may deter people from? And when I say people, I mean obviously mean police officers, but maybe just people that are just not good people in general to begin with, but specifically police officers. Do we think this is going to change anything?
So here's what I think. I really am still kind of floored that he was found guilty on all charges. I genuinely am. I think that this may, at least for a short period, I think it may slow down on police brutality. I think people may think, eek. But at the same time, I think the officers that are bad apples, and you can't get rid of that rot, right? So what I hope they see from this, and I think the first thing that needs to change is the whole brothers in blue covering for each other. Hopefully the next time there is a situation like a George Floyd, the other officers involved will be able to be like, I'm sure as shit not going to jail for this, and stop it. If that's all that it does, that would be a step in the right direction. And the optimist in me, which is a very small part, hopes that happens. But no, I don't think there's going to be any sweeping change. I just don't.
Yeah, not yet. I think we need to see this happen over and over and over and over again. My fear is that if Kimberly Potter does go to trial and she gets acquitted, then we're right back to square one. One step forward, 10 steps back. That would be my biggest fear.
Yeah, I agree with you. Jordan?
I don't know. It's hard to kind of discuss and, I don't know, pontificate on, the changes that could or whatever be made. I think in a lot of regards, I've already seen a lot of reaction from police about the confusion between a taser and a gun.
Mhm.
I've seen videos that cops are like, how the hell can she confuse a taser and a gun?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think what Jeff said does hold a lot of merit here. And that is, similarly to the rights argument, like the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
So
Well,
true.
similarly, the only way to expel bad police officers is to have good police officers say something, right? So
Mhm.
I think right now one of the things that could change, and again, it's not through legislation, it's not through anything like that, but like start to incentivize police calling out the illegal behavior of other police,
Yes.
right? Like these people, like, and I was just saying something on Facebook to somebody else too. It's more than just people being killed. Like bad police officers ruin people's lives. There was a case down in Florida of a cop who was discovered to be planting evidence. And when they looked back on his arrest record, they ended up throwing out over 1,000 convictions
Wow.
because of him
This
planting
one
evidence.
officer?
One
Wow.
officer.
One officer.
One
Wow.
officer. They vacated over 1,000 convictions because of him. Like it's called Seed of the Poisonous Tree.
Yeah.
Wherein everything he touched then went to crap because of the basis that he tainted everything.
Yep.
So I'm not saying he planted 1,000 cases worth of evidence, but this is the kind of thing that can happen. Now, use the law of averages, right? If that one police officer, say 7 police officers knew about it, but if that one police officer was involved in over 1,000 unlawful arrests, right? And
Mhm.
each one of those unlawful arrests saw a person have their life significantly impacted, right? And then each one of those people has 3 to 5 people who are negatively impacted by their life being impacted. What did that officer do, right? Are those 7 officers like just off scot-free? Like who else knew about it, right?
Yep. That's the
So
problem.
when you look at it in like a systematic way like that, a lot of times stories you hear is that cops who whistleblow on other cops end up getting demoted
Yeah.
and ostracized by their peers.
Or forced out.
There should not be a system in place inside of police culture that sees people who are genuinely blowing the whistle on unlawful conduct of other officers be punished for it.
Mhm.
They should be rewarded for it because police should be held to a higher standard than the rest of society, right? They swear an oath to uphold and protect the Constitution of the United States.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, but there's this thing called professional ethics, and you have to tell on people who are breaking the law. Like that's part of that, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So maybe, just maybe this trial has brought into light the fact that it is good, right, and proper to call out officers who are doing unlawful shit.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope you're right.
Perfectly
that was
said.
Huge step in the right direction.
Perfectly said, and I think that's the perfect way to end it for today. Want to thank everybody who tuned in for tuning in. We have what do we have coming up? Friday, we are going to do our regular news show, and you want to tune into that because Mr. Sterner was not happy with the title that I chose for last Friday's episode. So hear us hash that out, and then the following Tuesday, we have a week from today. We have was it the worst of the worst
The
90s
worst of the
movies?
worst. Mhm.
Yes.
90s movies. So you want to tune in for that. And then Jordan also made a wonderful suggestion in lieu of the pandemic and our obsession with zombie apocalypses. We're going to try and work this out if he's still listening. where he comes on and he kind of ranks the members of the Ever Evolving Truth as far as their usefulness in a post-apocalyptic world. And spoiler alert, I will definitely be last. Like I said, I am useless in a post-apocalyptic world. Hi, my name's Jeff. I can make movies, and I can't spell. My grammar. Other than that, I can't tie a knot. I can't build a fire. Certainly can't build a house or anything like that. So I would be the first one dead. I would just get in the way and jeopardize the whole group. So you want to tune in and leave your comments. Go over to our Facebook page, YouTube page, like and follow us, and we will see you soon.